Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. My name is Dimitris Mantadakis, and I come from Greece. I hope you all had a nice morning. I'm a 3D generalist, working as a freelancer for the past 3 years, and as a part-time effects artist for a well-known studio in Athens. I actually started my journey, my digital journey, creating games in Unity and programming with C# and C++. During the golden brackets era, if you are familiar, that was 7 years ago. And that's when I first came in contact with what 2D and 3D actually meant, what makes a good material, and I quickly realized that I needed to learn 3D modeling. It was a bit hard for me then, so I decided to stay with the simple shapes. And combined with some basic video editing and audio design, I started earning my generalist title early on. Everything changed when my uncle owns a production studio. Welcome. My uncle owns a production studio, and he told me to experiment with Cinema 4D first. And all excited, I found the demo version, downloaded it, and I immediately closed it because I was 12 years old. Yeah. So imagine if the first interface I opened was Houdini. The rage quit would have been a lot faster. So yeah, of course, luckily, I'm here, so I came back to it. And fast forward a couple of years, I was testing my skills with Cinema 4D. And Houdini was becoming quite popular in Greece. My uncle, now mentor, told me to jump on it. And of course, I started learning Houdini, and I immediately got hooked with flip fluid simulations. And I decided I needed to stick with them so I can add them to my skill set. I recognized the demand for good, realistic fluids, and that's when I started earning my first money as a freelancer. So yeah, that's my story, how I started my digital journey. Let's see my 2024 reel. No, it's all right. Thank you very much. So after hearing all that and seeing my reel, I would like to introduce you all to my first project that we'll go over today. And it's called Soda Opening. It's a personal project. The idea came from a client of mine. He aborted the idea, but I thought it had some potential. I didn't see anyone making it, so I thought I would give it a try myself. So let's see the actual project. It's a simple shot, a singular shot. I decided I wanted to keep everything inside Houdini, animations. Let me pause it for a second. Perfect. So yeah, I decided I wanted to keep everything inside Houdini, simulations, animations, rendering, so I'd be more flexible with troubleshooting and also with the export sizes, because everyone working with flip fluids knows that size matters. Okay, that was a good one. Not in the script. I used Octane Render and After Effects for simple compositing. And at first glance, you can spot a few things going on in the shot. The can animation, a volume simulation that affects the top droplets. We will see them later. And the liquid burst, and of course the main splash with the foam. So we're talking about 3 non-interactive simulations, separate simulations. I decided to go with this workflow because it saved me a lot of trouble trying to fit everything into one solver. It maximizes flexibility for tweaking each simulation individually at the cost of only minimal visual compromise. It's a good idea to evaluate each scenario you're in and see what benefits your project. A lot of times I'm forced to split simulations, even in commercial TV projects, and I only see benefits till now. So, yeah, in this project it was worth it. Let's break it down and start with the can animation. It's very simple. We will take a look how I created the lid and how I simply pushed it down. I want the effect there where the pull tab pushes down the lid and deforms it. With just 2 lines of code, I lerp each point's position from state 1 and state 2 using a simple attribute. And the attribute is visualized in screenshot A. And for this kind of attribute work, I prefer using motion operators from Toadstorm. We will talk a bit later about mobs. And of course, this can be created with native nodes in Houdini, but it's just a time saver to use mobs. So let's move on to the pull tab. It was created with the same approach. I froze the pin from the pull tab in place and used the match size node to make sure the tab stays precisely aligned above the lid. Then I added a simple rotation on the whole can, and my collisions for the flip simulations were ready to use. Also, I chopped the can in half because it wasn't visible in the camera, and I wanted to optimize my collisions. So moving forward to the liquid burst, here we don't have anything fancy about the setup. We import the collisions we created, and after some blast nodes and simple velocity creations, we are left with a couple of points shooting their velocities outwards, as we can see the yellow point, yeah. This simulation is worth analyzing its settings, as they can be used as a great guide towards final commercial output for a non-viscous simulation. Settings, of course, are highly dependent on scene scale in Houdini. Therefore, take these numbers I have here on screen with a grain of salt. And I usually work my flip simulations in around 1 and 2 Houdini units. Houdini units are just meters. If you stick with a consistent scene scale for your simulations, not only for flip fluids, but also in pyro or even rigid body simulations, if you stick with a consistent scene scale, then it will be easier for you to troubleshoot weird behaviors in simulations and identify which setting can fix it. And of course, if you use my settings and scene scale, you can have a nice go-to settings to start. Okay, moving on to some sketching I did. I'm not the best drawer, but it works. Now, the line between realistic and commercial ready fluid is a bit abstract, but I follow a personal rule I call the 3-phase rule. A good simulation should start with seeds, evolve into tendrils, and then end in droplets. It's crucial that the transition should be fast between the phases, and you shouldn't see long, stringy threads behind droplets, just clean breakups. These phases are a product of surface tension receding and global calculations mainly. Of course, there are a lot of settings in Flip, but we can't cover everything today. I make sure to take the time to balance surface tension and particle count, as they're the most sensitive thing in the Flip simulation settings. Usually, while you increase particles, you're going to slightly decrease surface tension. But you can also only find the golden ratio by trial and error. This project file will be available for everyone to explore, so you can see the settings on your own. Now, for the hero simulation, the foam simulation, it uses similar settings to the burst we saw before, but here's a quick checklist for clean behavior with deforming geometry when making collisions. Of course, we want to maximize our calculations per frame, so we have to increase substeps. I find myself increasing it 6 to 10, and also it's important that the time scale is low enough, so you can increase the calculations even more. And also the grid scale, I find it nice having it in 1.5. The grid scale does not only increase particles per voxel, but also increases the calculations, in the collision calculations. Detail easy to miss, but once you understand the changes between grid scale of 2, that is the default, and 1.5, you can evaluate each scenario and change accordingly. I would suggest changing the grid scale right after you open the solver to 1.5. Also, I changed the collisions oversampling. The volume fraction method, I changed it to collision oversampling. To be honest, I don't know the difference exactly, but I surely know it benefits my collisions. And something very important, I always disable the bounce forward in my static objects. This setting, when it is disabled, helps. These settings altogether help avoid particles exploding or slipping through collisions. And bounce forward, when it is enabled, you can see some particles slip through the collisions, travel through the collisions, and even if you maximize the substeps to 20, it wouldn't fix it. Okay, let's dive more into the foam setup. After retiming and cleaning unnecessary particles, it's okay to do post-simulation tweaks, of course. I'll do a strict selection of slow-moving particles, those losing velocity. The selection is made with a wrangle, deleting some percentage of the particles using the ID attribute. Always enable the ID attribute in FLIP settings. And I filter it out with whether the particle is losing velocity or not. I copy spheres onto those, as you can see there, the blue. Convert to VDBs, and I combine with a VDB mesh that has everything together. This deformation in the mesh helps the subsurface scattering, increases the subsurface scattering effect, and gives the foam more depth. And speaking of SSS, let's look at the material. It's simple, but ironically the most complex one on this project. There are two specular materials only for the foam simulation. One for the clean liquid, the Coca-Cola liquid, and one for the foam. The trick here is to mix them using an attribute that reads where the fluid is starting to lose momentum. You can see it in the screenshot there. The black mesh indicates the particles that started to lose momentum. Let's talk about the lighting setup. I don't have a visual representation because it is very simple. It's just an HDRI coupled with a key light and a rim light. It's a simple approach. HDRI for the extra reflections and the key light in order to, well, see the Coca-Cola and action, and the backlight for highlighting some edges. No textures or distribution techniques used. Here I prefer to keep it as simple as it gets because the heavy refractive materials together with the increased roughness of the Coca-Cola can gave me a hard time rendering in my machine. I used the dual 3090 GPU to render it, and it was like 4 to 5 minutes per frame. That's a lot. And let's move on. I want to address a refraction issue that I encounter quite often. It's a shading bug that you only encounter when you render with non-native renderers like Octane or Redshift. And in my case, I only see it happening when you mesh the simulation, the FLIP simulation, and add the refractive material. Let's see it in action here. It's a small flicker. It's like the normals are suddenly switching sides. That's not the case, though. The case is that sometimes in our meshes, there are holes forming up. And if a hole forms in the wrong spot, it will confuse the renderer's IOR and will make this glitch. A simple, easy fix is to create a Boolean and make a controlled hole. And this way, throughout the frames, you will have a hole and the problem will be fixed. But of course, the correct fix is to learn the native renderers. I want to encourage everyone, including myself, to explore Solaris and Karma, because bugs like that become a non-issue. But yeah, as a Cinema 4D user in the past and Octane renderer, it's a bit hard for me still. Before we wrap up this shot, quickly about the top droplets I was talking about. It's just some relaxed spheres driven by, or maybe advected by a smoke simulation. Yeah, it's very simple. And also, I painted an attribute on the can where the spheres collided with it in order to mix two materials again. The goal was to make a wet map and make the roughness 0 wherever the vellum spheres collided with the can. Yeah, nothing to see else here. Let's see the result one more time, and also let's see the different AOVs I render for the compositing. I'm not a compositing guy, but I thought it's a good opportunity to learn how to export them in Houdini and Octane. Indeed, it helped a lot with just minor adjustments. I was able to boost reflections wherever I needed, or color grade the diffuse map. In the regular projects, I export PNGs 16 still. They just work and everyone's happy, but I can definitely understand why studios or other artists prefer using EXRs, as they provide a rich color depth. That was the project about the Coca-Cola. I would like to move on to the next project. It's called Carré Bands, and it's the director's cut of a Greek TV commercial that plays right now as we speak in Greece. For this film, I partnered with my mentor, my uncle, where I was responsible for the liquid simulations. The four shots we will see now are the director's cut of the film, because most of the time clients tend to have different taste from us, and it's totally okay. I decided to come here with the director's cut. Let's see the film. I will let them play in the back. These 4 shots took a month to complete because when doing films for TV commercials, realism is not the only factor. Art direction plays a huge role and can need more time than actually setting up the simulations. A lot of times, the stylized ideas of clients can ruin our perception of realistic simulations in our eyes, in my case in fluids, and we have to find workflows that allow us to art direct the fluid as the client wants, even if the behavior is not realistic. A good example for this is one shot I worked on last year, and it was in my reel previously, in the left top corner. When seeing it, you can't really tell if it's the right behavior, if the chocolate should do these tendrils beneath it. Well, if you try to replicate it in real life, you will see that the chocolate will just come out of the chocolate, yes, covered, but it will not leave any tendrils behind. It will just act as a thick body of chocolate. So we were able to find the workflow to make the tendrils beneath. A good fix for that would be to treat the simulation very big scale. If we filled a pool worth of chocolate and made the chocolate bar the size of a table, then yes, we would probably get some tendrils, but I wouldn't prefer that, neither my computer would. let's talk about art-directed fluids, yes. And let's see something interesting about each shot that I showcased. On screen are some basic ways to help particle simulations stand out, things you need to be aware of apart from the technical settings of your simulation. Let's see an example for each shot. Starting with the chocolate splash, the simulation is rich in viscosity, and the goal here is to catch the fluid, forming sheets for the subsurface scattering to capture. The challenge here is not technical. The challenge is finding the correct seed in your noises, balancing the velocities throughout the source in order to get a cool shape. The final simulation shape was created by testing a lot of noise seeds, a lot of versions, and doing some velocity grooming in the end to sections I didn't like. Like, for example, the tendril you can see escaping in the top left corner. With some velocity adjustments, we can easily get rid of the tendril, but keep the rest of the velocities intact. For this velocity grooming, I'm using an HDA tool called Links Velocity Grooming. And as you can see, with just a click, I can just delete the little tendril. In cases like such, like this project, where the direction is very important for the client, it's a good idea to come back to them with 2 or 3 variations. Instead of simply rejecting the simulation, they will probably try to select the best one out of the 3. A simple example would be the Pepsi and Coca-Cola saying I heard in the past. If you see a single Coca-Cola can, the thoughts would be either I buy the can or not. But if you see a Coca-Cola and a Pepsi can, then the question shifts to what do I prefer, Coca-Cola or Pepsi? This way, the customer is more likely to spend money if he is given options to go through. And this is 2 chocolate splashes variations and also about the streams. Moving on to the close-up Bueno shot, let's take a look on how the UVs were created. And let's see a cool way to avoid problems when receding is on. The workflow for the UVs is the industry standard. As the nodes show, we just freeze a random frame, proceed to initialize UVs on points, and then copying them over to the moving liquid. Everything is matched by the ID attribute. When receding is on, though, particles spawn in areas that tend to break up. If the particles spawn after the frame we selected to make our UVs, then these particles will have no UVs and will cause a mess in the following frames. Here is a screenshot where the green artifacts are the new points that were created by the receding setting. And as the node structure shows, we should only copy the UVs, to the main liquid after we applied a simple 1 line of code that just deletes the receded particles. So without receded particles, we have no green artifacts, and the UVs are very smooth. UVs give a whole lot of depth in simulations, so I recently started to add them in every project. You don't have to overdo it. Maybe here I overdo it a bit, just to show to you guys, but some imperfections is very cool and really sell the effect. Once you start use motion operators by DotStorm, you will notice that you literally use them in every project. Motion operators are a Houdini digital asset that allows you to animate, make attributes, create animations very easily. At this project, they really helped me create fall-off attributes to adjust viscosity and air drag in my simulations. Stacking up the fall-offs, you can see how I controlled when my dripping will take place. A sphere there and some noises there. When creating the MOPS fall-off, then you can easily create the new attribute called viscosity, of course, to drive the viscosity of the fluid. And you can have different variable viscosity in your simulation. The goal here is to make certain areas of the liquid more drippy and other more stiff. At some point, we wanted to connect the two liquids you see in the corner here without actually touching the bread. You can see at images 3 and 4. And you can also see how close I managed to go with my liquid towards the bread with just using the motion operators and controlling where my dripping will take place. In this shot, I would want to talk about a new node that it was introduced in 20.5. It's a very cool node that can replace the pop curve force, the old pop curve force. The difference from the old pop curve force is that you can easily maintain a nice spread in width and a thin layer of fluid without having a problem with suction forces or even your fluid escaping from the path. So it's a very cool node to use when art directing fluid in paths and when you want a thin layer of liquid. I don't have any other screenshots to show here because it was a last-minute addition, but it was very cool to mention. Lastly, we have this shot and my favorite workflow till now. Doing changes in simulation is, of course, time-consuming. Crunching up the particles in order to get more defined edges costs time and disk size. In this project, where timeline was tight, I was put in a position that I needed quick turnaround, nice results, and high quality, of course. So I came up with a post-simulation tool that can add definition and refine the edges of your already cast mesh. You can see how, I don't know if it's visible here, but the simulation, the raw simulation mesh is up there, and you can enhance and define the edges post-simulation. This happens with a curvature tool made by Houdini Labs. You can see it there. But because it's very unstable, we have to do a bit of coding to stabilize it by adding temporal filtering. It gets a lot technical, so everyone that is interested in this can hit me up later. It works really well with viscous fluids till yet, when they move slow, assuming that everyone doing flip fluids uses 0.1 timescale, so your fluid will move slow. I haven't done proper testing, it's very early, and I guess I will just work on it and maybe release it in like an HDA tool. And I want to point out how much AI helps with VEX expressions and how quickly you can actually learn from the prompts and speed up your workflow, of course. So, to wrap things up, I really believe that fluid simulations will always have a strong place in the 3D industry. I do know that AI starts to take over in our industry too. Even a lot of my clients started asking about AI and how they can implement it to make things faster and cheaper for them, because this is their concern, of course. I believe AI will struggle to keep up with food commercials as they require precision, revisions, and of course, art direction, which is hard to do with prompting till now. My advice to anyone getting into simulations is to don't be afraid to crank up the particles. I usually see nice results after 5 or 8 million particles, starting particles, without receding. So when the simulation progresses, the particles may go up to 20, 30 million. Yeah, it's heavy on the machine, but it really makes a difference. I've seen a lot of guys making the correct workflows for the liquid simulation, but just keeping it very, very low resolution. I had one project last year that I had such a challenging shot. It was a splash behind the bottle, but it was very it was very hard, so I had to upgrade my setup on the go. I had to purchase a new computer while the project was running, so yeah, that was a bit stressing. And also, motionoperators.com, you can see the tool there. You can easily install it to art direct your fluids or just help your attribute life. And let's continue. Don't forget the art direction. Good simulation settings alone is not enough. The shapes, the motion, and the composition, these things are what tell the story in a film, and this is what clients care about in commercial TV. My goal is to make the best simulations possible, but of course I know I'm still young and I have a lot to learn. It's fascinating in this industry how our job is to keep up with the changes. And yeah, it is not a learning phase. It is our job to stay up to date. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you leave here inspired to make some cool splashes of your own. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this was very interesting for you. I would be delighted to answer any questions you may have. And yes, thank you.